Okay, Bez Hashem. Today's daf is Masechta Bava Kamma Daf Yid, and we're going to start from Masechta Bava Kamma Daf Tes Amid Beis. About we're starting from Tes Amid Beis, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines from the bottom. Hi, Sheldon.
Hello, how you doing, man?
Good. We're just starting from Tes Amid Beis. A very easier daf. Just a lot of basics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Tes Amid Beis. Tana Rabbanan. The rabbis taught. There's a severity over the ox, goring of the ox, than the damages caused by a pit. And there's a reverse. There's more stringencies by the pit more than that exists by the goring of the ox. Okay, so I'm not going to say what shar is. Shar is goring of the ox, and if someone owns an ox like that and it gores, the owner of the ox has to pay, or somebody dug a pit and something damage happened, the digger of the pit has to pay. So now the Brisa explains itself. There's more stringencies of shar over bar. Shahashar, the case of the shar, which means the shar, which is a mu'id, right? If it's a mu'id, if it means a 4-1 that did this damage 3 times, and it killed somebody, right? It killed somebody on the 3rd time. Mishalem is a kaifer. Hi, Alan. We're just Testament base, just in the bottom there. Shashoyer Mishalem es a kaifer. The ox pays kaifer. In other words, if the ox gored and killed somebody, the owner of the ox has to pay the value of the person that was killed. V'chayiv b'shloishim shel eved. And if the person that was killed was a eved Kanani, so the owner of the ox has to pay 30 shekel for that eved. It doesn't matter what the eved was worth. Even if the eved was worth only 10 shekel, you have to pay 30 shekel. Nigmar dinai. Let's say the ox they went to the Bezdin, and Bezdin said the ox is supposed to be killed. Prior to it getting killed, let's say a person took the ox and shechted it. Can you eat the meat? Asabana. You're not allowed to benefit from that ox. The darkoi, and another stringency that exists by shor is darkoi leilach lahazik. The method is it walks around and does damages. It's a movable being. Masha'en came a bar. Bar doesn't have all these qualities. Certainly, bar doesn't move around. If the bar does damage, the bar doesn't become asur bahana. You could still use that bar. And if a bar killed a person, right? Let's say somebody dug a pit, right? And then somebody fell into the pit and died. You don't have to pay anything because a pit is exempt from anything that happens to a human being. Now the Brisa says there's a stringency that exists by bar over shar, over the ox. Why? Shabar tchilas asiyas lenezek. The whole point of a bar is it's destined to do damage. When you dig a bar is only when you dig it in the middle of Rishus Rabim. You dig a bar in Queens Boulevard, there's no other purpose but to do damage. When you own an ox, there's a constructive purpose in having an ox. It's the plow to do work. Umod mitchalase. And the bar, the first time it does damage, you pay 100% of the damage. An ox, when it gores for the first time, you pay only 50%. So Mashain Kim Bashar, these things don't apply by a shar. Now we go to top of Yud Amarav. Choime Bashar Mebe'esh. Goring has a stringency over fire. What's the case of fire? Remember, a person has a coal. Let's say he made a barbecue and then didn't put out the coal. And then it caught fire in your yard, and then it went into somebody else's yard and burned his wheat. So then the one that left the fire unattended is obligated to pay the damages. So chayme b'shar me'be'esh, there's more stringencies by shar over eish. Chayme be'esh me'b'shar, and there's more stringencies by fire over the ox. Chayme b'shar me'be'esh, there's more stringency by the ox over the fire. Shashar v'shalom koifer. We saw this before. Shar, that it kills a human being, the owner of the ox has to pay the value of that human being. That's called koifer. V'chayev b'shloishim shelevet. If it was a slave, he has to pay 30 shekel. Nigma dinoi. If the ox was subject to judgment that it's supposed to be killed, and you shecht it prior to it getting killed, also bahano, you're still not allowed to benefit from that meat. And then there's another din. And let's say you gave the ox to be watched by somebody who's an imbecile or somebody who's a young under bar mitzvah boy, so they can't really watch the ox. So you were negligent. So after giving it over to a shcher shaytiv katan, any damage that happens, chayev, the person that gave it over to the shaita and katan to watch the ox,
not a liable person.
Yeah, you're right, because this shcher shaytiv katan cannot watch an ox.
Not.
Certain if let's say somebody had a fire and it burned a human being, then you're not chayiv to pay because the human being could have ran away. Even if let's say you lit a tied up human being, anyway you're going to be potter from paying for that human being, is because you're going to get killed. Come labor derabbanai, because you committed murder. So you never paid for the value of the human being that was killed. And same thing that all the other things in Mosre, Lecher, Shaita, V'Katan, over there you'll be potter by Eish, as we learned in the previous page. Choyme be'Eish mi b'Shar. Eish has more stringencies than over Shar. Shar Eish mu'edes mitchilasai. The fire, right away, whatever it does damage, you pay 100% of the damage right away. Ma'ashenkin b'Shar, Shar, you only pay 50% of the damage. The opposite holds true. Choyme be'Eish mi b'Bar. Eish has more stringencies than Bar. And Choyme bar mi b'Eish. And Bar has more stringencies than Eish. Why? Choyme bar mi b'Eish. Bar, by definition, is more stringent than fire, because the whole point of opening the bar has no other purpose but to do damage. A fire, the point of having a fire is to cook with. So, and if you left an open bar in the watch of a cher shaytiv cotton, if somebody falls into that bar, you chayev mashenke be'eish, because the fire, if you gave it in a cher shaytiv cotton, it still needs something else to create the damage. It's not just a cher shaytiv cotton. So therefore, by a fire, you'd be potter by giving it over into the watch of a cher shaytiv cotton. Choyme be'eish mibo'ar, and the opposite is true. There's stringencies that exist by fire more than bar. Eish is a movable thing. Once it catches fire, it moves continues to do damage. Umu edes, and not only that, an eish pays 100% of the damage. It doesn't matter what it burnt, whether it's something that's fire burns, which is example wood. Wood is a normal thing that fire burns. You have to pay. And even if it's something that normally you don't use it as fuel for the fire, let us assume, let's say it's kalim or vases or glass dishes. You never use that for the fire. So masha ain't came but bar. So but bar, this is a very interesting thing, that a bar is not obligated to pay if kalim fall in the bar. If someone was walking and he was carrying dishes and fell into the pit and injured his leg and broke all the dishes, the owner of the bar is exempt from paying. Why? Because the pasuk says, like we're going to bring up the pasuk, that v'nafal sham shar or chamar. There's only time you're opening is if only that fell into the pit an ox or a donkey. So we darshan shar v'loy adam, chamar v'loy kalim, that you're not obligated to pay whether a human gets damaged in that pit or a kalim, or you broke any kalim that gets damaged because of the pit. You're not obligated to pay. Don't ask me. These things are not supposed to make sense. They're just gzeres hakosiv. So that's the end of the brisa. Says the Gemara. The Gemara asks a couple of questions. The brisa to establish an author of the brisa. So, Frank the Gemara, the listener, let it say choyme b'shar me'babar. Ox is more stricter than a bar. Why? Shahashor chayev boyis the kalim. The ox, when it gores, if it gores and destroys kalim, it's obligated to pay. Masha enkim babar. A pit is not obligated to pay kalim. Why? In the beginning of the brisa, here's the beginning of the brisa. Choyme b'shar me'babar. It says shar pays kaifer this and that. It doesn't say shar pays kalim and bar doesn't pay kalim. So why don't we list that as one of the differences between shar and bar? Answers the Gemara. Homani, I'll tell you. The author of our brisa is Rabbi Yehudi. Is the author of the brisa Rabbi Yehuda, the bechayev on this kalim babar, that he holds that kalim, if it gets damaged in a pit, you're obligated to pay. He doesn't have that drasha, shar chamor. If a kalim gets damaged through a bar, it's also obligated. So it's not a difference between shar and bar. Says the Gemara, if that's the case, but the Seifa, the Brisa, seems to be against Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, let us read the Seifa of the Brisa. Choima, this is what we were saying before. The Brisa at the end says, Choima be'esh mi babar, beish is more stricter than bar, shah eish darka leilach lahazik. Eish is the way it as it goes, it does damage. It's a movable damage. You have to pay 100%. You're forewarned whether it destroys and burns something that's normally burnt by fire and whether it's something that's not normally burnt by fire. A bar is not obligated to pay something that's not normal for a pit. What is something by fire? Manihu eitzim. Wood gets consumed by fire. That's the normal thing that fire uses as fuel. What's not appropriate for fire as fuel? Maniu kalim. One uses dishes as fuel for a fire. So fire, you have to pay whether you burnt wood or whether you burnt kalim. And then the Brisa says, Masha ein came a bar. A bar doesn't pay if it damaged something that's like kalim. So we see that the Brisa is not like Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda, if the Brisa went according to Rabbi Yehuda, didn't you say B'chayev hoya Rabbi Yehuda al niske kelim babar? Rabbi Yehuda says you are obligated to for niske kelim, damages of kelim in a bar. So how could you say our Mishnah that Brisa is going according to Rabbi Yehuda? Says the Gemara, Ella la'olam. I will tell you the entire Brisa with all these halachas are Rabbanan. And what do Rabbanan hold? That a kalim in a bar are not obligated to pay. So then why didn't it list as one of the advantages and chumras of shar over bar is that shar pays kalim and bar does not pay a kalim? Why didn't it mention that in the Brisa? So we see this teretz often enough. Our Tana, he lists what he can, v'shir, and he left things out. So the Gemara asks, you can't just leave one thing out because then it means that you specifically don't hold that's something left out. You have to leave a few things out. So my shai, the high shai, what other thing did it leave out that it didn't mention besides kalim babar? And says the Gemara shir tamun, the case of hidden items. You see, here comes another big halacha by eish, by fire. Fire is not obligated to pay if something is hidden in a bag. For example, you have a fire that burns a wheat field, and in the wheat field, out of sight, is a bag full of dishes, and it destroys that dishes. So then, since it's in a bag, the Torah says that it's not obligated to pay. The only time Aisha is obligated to pay if it's Kamma, if it's standing wheat, which you can visually see. But if it's in a bag, you're obligated to if it's in a bag, you're potter from paying, exempt from paying by fire. But by the other cases, let's say an animal gores a bag full of dishes, it's obligated to pay. If a bar would, let's say a donkey falls into a bar and it has, let's say, wheat food in the bag, and it all gets, or eggs, let's say it has in the bag, and it all gets crushed in the fall, there you're obligated to pay, even though it's in a bag, because other mazikin are obligated to pay even if it's not a visual item that you can see. But eish, it has to be visual. You have to be able to see it. So if there's something there in the wheat field that's not visible to the eye, you're not obligated to pay. And that was left out in the Brisa as one of the advantages and disadvantages of eish. And if you want, I can tell you that another teretz. Really, the Brisa goes according to Rabbi Yehuda. What does it mean? Something that's not appropriate for it? Not that it's kalim. Kalim in a bar is obligated to pay. Lav latuya kalim. Elo latuya lichanira v'sichzchabonov. If it singed it destroyed a plowed field or singed stones. So even though it's not just totally destroying something, the fire, but since now you can't plant over there, or you can't use those stones because they're now, dirty stones. They're full of sit. So then Aish would be obligated to pay. But bar cannot damage dirt. It's impossible to damage dirt. So that's an advantage of Aish over bar. But really, the whole brisa goes according to Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, so now you have you just know that there's a machlekes, which we'll learn more about later on. Is bar obligated when it's kalim or not? Maskif law, Rav Ashi says, ask the question, listen, let us say, a shar is obligated. Let's say you have a carbon shlomim, and it all of a sudden it broke its leg. So you can't bring it as a carbon, so you transfer the kedusha onto money and bought another carbon. That is a carbon, that is an animal that you can keep. But the halachas to that animal, since that animal was once a carbon, you can't, you can eat it, but you can't share its wool, or you can't drink its milk. And if it dies, you can't give its carcass to the dogs. So there, if a shar gores such an animal, the owner of the ox has to pay the owner of the psulei hamikdashim. Mashenkin babar. If a ox that was once a carbon and now became invalidated for a carbon, fell into a pit, you're not obligated to pay, because the Torah tells you that the it's that it only obligated to pay if you can feed the carcass to dogs, and psulei hamikdashim is something that cannot be fed to dogs. So that is a difference between shar and bar. Why isn't that mentioned in the brisa? So if you're going to say bishlam rabbanon, if you're going to say our brisa goes according to rabbanon, aidi shayir hach shayina mahach. So then it left out tamun, and it left out tamun. So it left out kalim, and it leaves something psulei mikdashim also. Eli Amrit Rabbi Yehuda. But if you said our brisa goes according to Rabbi Yehuda, there's no leftover here. My shayir, the high shayir. Why did it leave out psulei mikdashim? What else did it leave out? Answers the Gemara, Shir Dash Beniroi, that it left out that if an ox trampled onto a plowed field in anger to destroy the plowing of a field, so that is considered like something that could only be done by a shar and not by a bar, because a bar again cannot damage dirt. It could only damage something falling into the bar. Says that's not considered a leftover that the Tana didn't mention. That's included in what the brisa said, that a shar is darkei leilech lahazek. It, as it goes, it can do damage. It can damage with its horns, or it can damage with its feet if it does it out of anger and intention to do damage. That's not a good. So the Gemara seems to prefer that the brisa is only according to the Rabbana. Let's go into the next Gemara. Hichsha b'miktzas migskei. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught. Hichsha b'miktzas niskei. Chafti b'tashlumi niskei kehashka kol niskei. The brisa says that sometimes you only did a little part of preparing the damage, and you're obligated to pay the entire damages. That means you only did a little negligence, and you're obligated to pay the entire damage. Ketzad, what's the case? We know a halacha that a pit that's dug for 9 tefachim, the digger of the pit has to pay for damages. That means if an ox falls in there, he has to pay for the damages. But not if the ox dies, because a 9 tefach bar does not kill. But if it turns out that you dug a 10 tefach pit, then it could kill. And then you're obligated to pay for the death of the animal. So let's say you have a case. Hachoifer bar tisha. One guy dug a pit of 9 tefach. So he made a pit that can do damage, but not death. Uvo acher, and the other guy, second guy came, and all he did was dig 1 extra tefach. V'yishlimoi, and he completed it la'asara to 10 tefachim. Ha'acharoin chayev. So the brisa seems to say that the last person not only is obligated to pay for death of animals, but even for damages of the animals. He takes over the whole entire responsibility of that damage, of all the damages that come about through this pit. So we see that if somebody even did a little bit, is a case, it's like a riddle. You did only a part of the creation of the damage, and you're obligated to pay for all the damages That's what this brisa is. That's what our Mishnah was referring to. Odloike Rebbe, our Mishnah is not going according to Rebbe. Tanya, we learned in the brisa. Guy digs a 9 tefach, and somebody completed it to 10. Achron Chayev. The last guy that dig is obligated for damages and all death. Rebbe says, Achar lemisa, achar shneim lenizokim. In other words, Rebbe says, no, Rebbe argues. The second guy, the one that made it to a 10 tefach pit, he has to pay for death of animals. But both of them have to chip in for damages of an animal. Because really, it was already a 9 tefach pit prior to this guy making it 10 tefach. So the first guy is responsible, doesn't lose his responsibility for damages. So what the Gemara is saying is that brisa, which says Achron Chayev, is going not like Rebbe, because Rebbe says when it comes to damage of animals that falling into that pit, they're both sharing the responsibility. That's what the Gemara is now initially thinking. Rapapa says the brisa could even go like Rebbe. Bryce is only saying the only one that's chayiv is Achron, the last guy, because lemisa of a divrei hakol, because the Bryce is telling you that when it comes to the death of the animal, only the last one, the one that made that extra tefach, he's chayiv for all the death, but not for damages. So that's the Bryce could even go according to Rebbe, and that's how the Ikad Amri learned. Lema the like Rebbe, the others said that the interaction was this following. Would you say a Bryce does not go like Rebbe? Amar Papa, no. The Misa v'divrei hakol. That Bryce was saying the Misa, that means it's regarding the death of the animal, v'divrei hakol, and it's going according to everybody. Okay, but what you see from this brisa is that here's a guy, he didn't dig a 10 tefach bar. He only dug 1 tefach of a previously dug bar that was 9 tefachim. He just made it into the 10th tefach. So then he takes over any death that occurs to any animal falling into the pit, he's totally responsible. So here's a guy that only did a little part of creation of the pit, and he's obligated to pay for the entire damages. Maskif lo Rab Zera says that the only case you can give me where somebody does a little part and he has to pay the whole thing. V'suleka v'a'ika. I'll give you a following case. A man gave the responsibility of his ox. He had a wild ox. And he says to 5 people, you watch my wild ox. And one guy, he was negligent. He walked away from watching the ox. And then the ox did damage. Chayev, the guy, is obligated to pay. Now, he was supposed to only watch 1/5 of the ox. And yet, when the ox, because he was negligent, walked away from his post, and when it does damage, he's obligated to pay for the entire damages. They don't obligate the other four people. So isn't that a good case of one guy doing only part of the damage and he has to pay the whole thing? He facilitated part of the damage and he has to pay the whole thing. So the Gemara says that's not a good case. Hey, Kadami, without him, it would not have been watched. Pshita, the EU covered. That means they needed the 5th guy in order to completely watch this ox, and therefore, of course, he's obligated to pay the entire thing. On the other hand, let's say by the pit, the guy dug 1 tefach. A 1 tefach doesn't kill an animal. It's only because the other guys dug the 9 tefach prior to him. So then he's just adding to that. Yet we're obligating to pay for all the death of the animal. So that's a good example. But here, without him, without the 5th guy over here, this ox could not have been watched at all. And by him being negligent, of course he has to pay the entire damage because he's causing the entire damage. So if that's the case, Ella, if you were to say the lab without him, it would have been watched anyway. Let's say 4 people could still watch this ox. So Mike Ovid, why would you obligate him to pay? He didn't do anything. He should be totally potter. Another question. If you add more fuel to a fire, you added a bundle to the fire, the guy that added the bundle that allowed the fire to transfer into another person's property and burned somebody else's tefua, he's obligated to pay. Says the Gemara, hey Kadami, what's that talking about? We go to Amabez. If it was without him, it wouldn't have gone. Pshita, he didn't do anything because of course he didn't do anything. If without him, it wouldn't have gone. Of course, he's obligated to pay. Because without him, no damage would have happened. Because he added wood, it now the fire spread to burn somebody else's field. But on the other hand, by the bar, the guys that did it prior, the guy that made the 9 tefach bar, he already did part of the misa because he created a bar that does nezek, which is like a half a death. Ella the blav iu azla. Even if you can say that the prices that the case is that without this adding of the fuel, it would have burned somebody else's field anyway. My covered. So then what did he do? Why are you obligating him to pay? This would have happened even without him. Says the Gemara, Rapapa asked the question, V'ika haditanya, another brisa. Hey, sheyashval safsul echav v'lo shavru. There are 5 people sitting on a bench. They didn't break the bench. V'lo echad v'yashiv olav, and one person sat on them, on the bench. So he's the 6th person on the bench. Ushvar, and the bench got broken. Ha'achron chayev, the last guy who broke the bench is chayev to pay. V'amar Papa says, "Kegoin Papa bar Abba." He said that it's talking about a fat guy who's the 6th person coming onto this bench. If he broke the bench, then all the 5 people are not obligated to pay. It's only the last guy who came is obligated to pay. So, Frank the Gemara, that's what the Brisa says. So the Gemara says, "Hey, Chadam, what's the Brisa talking about? If without him it wouldn't have broken, and because the fat guy sat on the bench, that's why it broke. Pshita, of course, he's obligated to pay because it wouldn't have broken without him. And Masha'en came by the bar, some damage would have happened without this 10th guy doing it. So it's not similar. Ella, if you want to say the Bryce is talking about the Balav Iyu Nami Bitbar, without the 6th guy coming, the bench would have broken anyway. Micah of it. Then what did he do? Why is he obligated to pay if this bench would have broken with just the 5 people sitting on the bench? So the Bryce doesn't make sense. So how are you going to answer the Bryce? Like tzricha, the Bryce, you see, till now, if you make up a case, you don't have to pay for it. But the Bryce is giving you a case of 5 people sitting on the bench, and the 6th guy comes, and he has obligated to pay all the damages. So what's that talking about? So the Gemara says, the belive iu itba b'treishah, the hashbi itba b'chadashah. The Bryce is talking about that without the 6th guy coming to the bench would have lasted for 2 hours. Now this 6th guy came and sat on the bench. He caused the bench to break in 1 hour. The Amri lay, because the people say to him, "Ilav at." If you 6th guy wouldn't have came sat on the bench, we would have sat extra, and then we would have gotten up, and nothing would have happened to the bench because we would have gotten up early and not before the 2 hours are up, and that's why you should be obligated to pay. On the other hand, by a bar again. The first guys dug the 9 tefach bars, which was a bar that can halfway kill a person, kill an animal. So that's why he did something, and yet you're obligated to pay the last guy. So says the Gemara, just asking the question on the Brisa, on the guy, the 6th guy says, "Why should I have to pay? If you saw that I'm the 6th guy sitting on this bench, why didn't you get up and walk away? And with me alone, this bench wouldn't have broken. I still need you to break the bench in 1 hour." Like tzricha, so the Brisa answers like this: the reason why they didn't get up, and the 5 people didn't get up, the Bahadi Simich Beitvar, he actually did it. The fat guy sat on the laps of all the 5 people, and they couldn't get up because he was so heavy they couldn't lift him over. So says the Gemara Pshita, then of course the fat guy has to pay. He causing them not to get up. The Gemara says, no. Mao, the same I would have thought, he's not sitting on the bench. He's actually leaning on them. And therefore, his energy is not as if he's doing it himself. It's only his energy, his weight is not, his power is considered like his body itself. Kamash Malam, that's what the Brisa teaches you. The koichoi, his energy, his power is kegufa, is like his body. The way the body can break, so then his energy can break a bench. One last question, and then we'll stop in a half a minute. V'su leika. Let me give you another case. V'ika, let us say the case. The following case. 10 people slap somebody at one time. With 10 sticks, whether they do it at one shot or whether they do it one after another. Umays, and the victim died. Kulam Peturim, they're all dead. They're all exempt because not one person killed them entirely. They needed all 10 to do it, whether they do it all at once or they one guy and then all 10 give him at separate times a whack. They're all potter. Rabbi Yehuda ben Seira, Rabbi Yehuda says, if they whack this guy one after another, and the 10th man that finally gave the final blow killed him, he's the one that caused the closer to death. Even though they all did a partial death, the one that gave the final blow is chayiv to pay. So according to Rabbi Yehuda ben Seira, we have a case. A guy can do a little bit of the killing, and he's chayiv for the entire killing. So why don't we use that as the example that the Mishnah is talking about? So the Gemara gives you two terutzim. One answer is b'kital l'loy kamari. Our Mishnah is not talking about death, killing of a person. Our Mishnah is using damages. That's what our Masechta is about. The Ibai is saying, but plukta loy kamari. Our Mishnah doesn't go like the Machlekes, because Rabbi Yehuda ben Seira is only one opinion. The Rabbanan hold you're only obligated to killing a person if you kill the entire person. Frank the Gemara, the final question, even one you said our Mishnah doesn't go, our Brisa doesn't, our Brisa is not like a Rebbe. So the Gemara says, like Rebbe, our Mishnah, we could say our Mishnah goes not like, to say our Mishnah is like Rabbi Yehuda ben Seira and not like Rabbanan, that's not a good idea. But to say our Mishnah is not like Rebbe, but like the Rabbanan, that's saying the Mishnah is going like the majority opinion, that's okay to say. Okay, we'll continue Be'ez Hashem tomorrow with more of this Venusagya.
Yes,
Thank you. Thank you.
Night.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Night.